Hi diddly ho there, neighbors. RJ Carter with criticalblast.com here, and we are going to finish up reading the Destroyer meets It's Batman, but we can't call him that story that was published in the More Blood anthology a couple of years back. Important story to me because this is the story that got me noticed by the publishers at Destroyer Books and allowed me to move on to continue writing the Destroyer Bully Pulpit and the Destroyer Continental Divide. And yes, I'm still trying to work on more Destroyers, but right now my focus is on getting out of this hotel. So if you can please go to the Indiegogo that I'm going to link to in our description. I'm going to close a few things out here because it looks like we might be having a little bit of lag. It might just be the video playback on my end, but I definitely don't want it to impact anybody who's going to watch the video later. There we go. Close out those nagging little windows. And this is inspired by Mr. Edwin Boyette, the moral compass of Comicsgate, who is doing live readings of Dune on his live streams. We are up to chapter 8. There's just chapter 8 and 9 left, and then a little epilogue. So if you don't know where we're at, go back when we're done here and catch up, because it's important. This isn't something you can just jump into the middle of and expect to, well, you can. Don't go away, obviously. Just stick around, and we're going to finish this up now. So where we were at was the vigilante who dresses like a bat in the city had teamed up with Remo and were taken out by the Mr. Gordon's android that had been inhabited by the corrupted friend artificial intelligence by a virus that had been released by a clown-looking psychopath in an unnamed asylum. Chapter 8. The billionaire groaned as he attempted to sit up. "Master, your injuries have never gotten in the way of the work before," he replied to the butler. Haltingly, he eased himself off the couch and slowly made his way to the grandfather clock in the study. Opening the quartz cover to the face, he set the time to 10:47. Remo heard a faint click, and the clock moved away from the door, revealing an entrance to a staircase leading down. Remo looked to Chun, then to the butler, shrugged, and the three of them followed the man as he didn't quite stumble down the stairs. Halfway down the steps, they emerged into an expansive cavern. Suspended from the cathedral-like ceiling were a single-seat helicopter and a miniature VTOL aircraft. The floor of the cave was like a museum of artifacts, nothing like Remo had ever seen before. A lifelike Tyrannosaurus Rex stood menacingly in one corner, glowering over a Lincoln penny the size of a small house. Against one wall stood an array of glass cases displaying a variation of the vigilante's costumes, a decidedly female cut, next to a smaller red and green tunic and shorts outfit, one which would expect a circus performer to wear. Near those were several pedestals, each topped with a glass case holding bizarre items. Further off, Remo saw the car, now parked on smooth macadam, as well as a nearby dock jutting out into an underground waterway in which was moored a sleek black motorboat. "A cave!" Chun exclaimed in awe. "Why did I not think of this before? Remo, a cave would be most—" "No, but the closet is already—" "The closet is already a spare warehouse." Chun huffed and glared. "I will eventually run out of room for the storing of the many treasures of Sananju, but do you care?" "Surely not. Why should you worry about the belongings of an old man? I tremble to think of what shall become of such things when I pass on." "I'll have a yard sale," said Remo. "You should consider that yourself. Get rid of a few things." Chun looked stricken. "The first thing I should get rid of would be your worthless carcass," he said. "But alas, there is not enough gold in the coffers of old Sananju to pay someone to take you off my hands." Remo sighed. "Look, I'll see if we can't get a contractor to build another floor on, okay?" he said. "But no cave," he added, as he reached the bottom of the stairs. Ignoring the squabbling of masters of Sananju, their begrudging host settled into a high-backed swivel chair, then took the cowl from the counter and carefully lowered it over his bandaged head. Remo looked around the cave at the others. He does know that we've all seen him without the mask on, right?" he asked. Chun nodded understandingly. "He is taking on his aspect," the wizened master said sagely. It is how he becomes who he truly is. The butler sighed. I fear who he truly is will one day be the end of who he once was, he said wearily, if indeed that hasn't happened already. Turning to his guests, he became formal once more. I've prepared a braised South Pacific salmon with basmati pilaf. Shall I serve it now? Jeeves, you read my mind, said Remo. You psychic? Hardly, sir, he sniffed. I'm a butler. Chin held high, he stiffly exited the cave. You know, Chun, said Remo, I don't think Dracula's the only one putting on an act around this nut house. Chun watched the butler's exit. We should get one of those also, Remo. What, a butler? It is seemly for the master of Sinanju to have a servant, nodded Chun. Yeah, well, you can put that on your Christmas list next year, said Remo. Maybe Smitty Claus will stick one in your stocking. The next few hours passed in uneasy silence, interrupted only by the comings and goings of the butler, once to bring 3 plates of dinner, once to collect the 2 empty plates and 1 untouched one. During that time, the masked man said nothing as he scrolled through screen after screen of data at the monstrous agglomeration of computer terminals. Chun contented himself by taking advantage of the opportunity to meditate, but Remo felt confined by the cavern and was growing antsier by the moment. Inactivity wasn't something he took too easily when there was a job to be done. The hum of a service elevator, followed by the thump of the doors sliding open, heralded the arrival of a visitor to the cave. However, it wasn't the butler, but an exuberant teen that came bounding out, dressed in muted reds and greens. His size and youth took Remo by surprise. He'd heard of the kid, sure, but even after meeting the city's urban legend face to face, he still couldn't believe the man was so singularly driven that he would willingly involve a child in his dangerous crusade. Hey, the boy checked himself upon quickly noticing the unexpected presence of Remo and Chun. Okay, since you aren't currently mopping up the guano with these guys, I'm going to assume they're friends of yours. They're not our enemies, his mentor grudgingly acknowledged. For now, at least. Chun sounded wistful as he spoke to Remo in Korean. I wish the Emperor Smith would have had the foresight to have sent me someone as young to train, instead of settling for your pitiful specimen when he sought me an apprentice, he said. He might have actually achieved some skill in Sinanju by the time he reached your age. Even you, little father, wouldn't have taken a child into the fights we've had, Remo responded, also in Korean. The teen smirked and turned to his older partner. Ogik danshenmyan, Uncle Kanginal, Alganal Ansubinara, he said. Yes, the vigilante agreed. He's nearly as fluent in it as you are. Remo's jaw hung open, and he looked to Chun. The ancient Korean merely shrugged. He is not wrong, the master of Sinanju said. You speak with a mouthful of marbles. Whatever, little father, Remo said. He's still just a kid. I can't believe Drac would be stupid enough to send a child out after the psychos he runs up against. Hey, the boy interjected. I'm not exactly a lightweight, you know. I've been trained by some of the best. I'm sure you have, Remo said, rolling his eyes. I bet I could take you, the kid insisted, moving in and standing nose to chest with Remo. I've beaten terrorists. I've taken on a whole league of trained assassins. Heck, just surviving my time with Shiva. Your time with who? Remo exclaimed. Chun gently interposed himself between the two of them. Remo, I understand that arguing with children might bolster your shriveled ego, but you embarrass me by doing so in front of others. He turned to face the vigilante's young ward and looked him over appraisingly. I will admit to curiosity, he continued. You have the bearing of a white who is somewhat less clumsy than most. Thanks, the boy replied. I would see these vaunted talents of which you boast, Chun continued. I assume your guardian maintains at least some small area which passes for a proving ground? There are mats in the northeast corner, their host said without looking away from his work. No showboating, he added. No problem, the younger hero said. And don't kill him. Geez, he's an old man. I'm not going to... I wasn't talking to you, the brooding figure said grimly. Putting a hand on the young apprentice's shoulder, Chun guided the stunned teenager to the sparring mats. Do not listen to him, Chun said. He confuses caution with uncertainty. Chun gave a thin smile that crinkled his wizened features. By all means, do try to kill me. I hope you know the shortest route to the nearest hospital, Remo said to the cowled figure as the master of Sinanju and the teen hero walked away. So, you come up with any ideas on how to chase a ghost? Trying to second-guess fool's logic is useless, the man said. All that's going to cause is the death of more people while we perpetually arrive late to the scene. No, we've got to control the path Fool takes and get ahead of it. Gloved hands moved over one of the many keyboards, and the central monitor blinked out, replaced with the image of a floating, disembodied emerald mask with a feminine appearance. I have company, the man said, directing the comment to the face on the screen. So I see. The voice was distinctly female with a Greek accent. Remo could tell the accent was an electronic addition, serving to mask the identity of the person on the other end. What is it with these people and their secret identities? He muttered to himself, shaking his head. Does this call have anything to do with every online news photo of every world leader suddenly displaying a digitized pair of bunny ears and their flies unzipped? There's an artificial intelligence loose on the World Wide Web, the vigilante replied. Quickly, he explained what was known of Fool's origins, including how it had been traced back to the clownish serial killer. All right, she said. I'll set up a standard sniffer and see what that turns up before sending out the more complex bots. Negative, said the masked man. I contacted you because I specifically want you to stay off this investigation. In fact, I want you to initiate emergency shutdown immediately. Your systems are too critical. We can't afford for Fool to infiltrate your equipment. The disembodied voice mused. An AI with that personality would definitely be tempted by all this processing power and would become incredibly dangerous if it accessed the sensitive information regarding agents and operations. Look, Remo interrupted, I don't know a lot about how these computer thingies work. As far as I'm concerned, it's a big box with an invisible genie in it that answers your questions sometimes and hangs out a big blue out to lunch sign when you need it most. Can't we just build some kind of trap for it? If we do it right, we don't have to. I take it you have a plan, the electronic visitor asked. Wait, what am I saying? You always have a plan. We already have a system in place, he said. He rose from his seat and stood silhouetted in the glow of the multiple monitors, which took up the greater part of the cave wall. No, the voice exclaimed. You're going to let that thing into there? The system is more securely encrypted than the CIA, he said. If I turn it on itself to prevent outgoing traffic instead of incoming, it should buy us the few necessary seconds needed to sever our connections. Looking over at Remo, whose eyes were glazing over, he said quickly, It will trap Fool's intelligence here in the cave. And then what? The female voice asked. Dismantle the system piece by piece? Sanitize the hard disk platters and start all over? I've done it before, he said. The data's backed up every morning anyway. But it's going to be tricky timing. I'll have my partner in place outside to sever the cables as soon as Fool has downloaded itself into the system. You're the boss, she said with a resigned sigh. Good luck. The glowing green mask blinked and was gone from the monitor, and the grim-visaged man resumed working the keyboard. As the hero set about preparing the new computer protocols, simultaneously offloading the most recent data acquisitions for preservation, Remo sat idly by, tapping his fingers rhythmically into a rounded piece of shale he had pried from the wall of the cave. With each tap, the indentations left behind grew deeper and deeper. Had he wanted, he could have drilled straight through it with a single tap of any finger, but he was merely trying to while away the seeming eternity between now and the fight he anticipated would be coming soon. In the corner of the cave, Chun continued allowing the vigilante's young ward to spar with him, the boy panting and sweating profusely as the master of Sinanju swatted away all his attacks with an effortlessness that bordered on boredom. As if to emphasize his lack of trying, Chun stuffled a yawn with one hand, grabbing the leaping teen in midair with the other and sending him flying back to the far end of the mat. So why'd you become a cop? Remo's finger pierced the shale, shattering it, as the vigilante's question came from seemingly nowhere. I'm not a cop, he said. You were, the man said coolly. At least until you died, presuming that headstone in New Jersey is yours. And it is. Almost to himself, he added, I can't believe any jury would reach an execution verdict on such obviously falsified evidence. Remo exhaled. Sinanju at its core was all about breathing, and since Remo had become one with the sun source, this breathing had become natural to him. But there were rare times when Remo still felt the need to steady himself with a deep breath. Talking about his past was one of those times. I don't know, he said. Same reason I do what I do now, I suppose. Makes some kind of difference. You do what you do now because you're paid to, the masked man countered. Well, I wasn't exactly doing charity work as a cop either, Remo said. Just near that, what with the lousy pay and all. Besides, he added, indicating Chung with a nod of his head, he's the greedy one. Is it greed to value the service of Sinanju? the master called across the cave in his sing-song voice, simultaneously flipping the vigilante's young partner over one shoulder, careening him once again to the ground. Is it greed to graciously take what paltry amounts are willingly offered in exchange for what many would gladly deliver up a mountain of gold? So he's the mercenary and you're the altruist, their host said. Right. Hey, you don't know me, okay? Remo said. You may think you're the world's greatest detective or something, but you do not know me. I know you spent your childhood in an orphanage, the masked hero said flatly. He continued tapping keys, text scrolling across the many screens of their computer arrays. I know you got into several fights with the other children, even a few of the nuns. After that, you joined the police academy where you should have failed out, but persevered anyway. You really wanted that job. Lousy pay and all. Remo frowned. Smith really wouldn't like knowing that someone had so much information about him. Yeah, well, if there'd been more good cops around when I was a kid, a lot of my friends wouldn't have ended up in that orphanage with me, he said. If there'd been more good cops, one of my buddies there wouldn't have had to see his mom and dad shot to death over $20 in a bag of groceries. The tapping stopped, and even with the occasional grunt and thump from the sparring match, the cave seemed eerily still. But then you probably wouldn't know anything about that, would you, Mr. Rich? And Remo caught a glimpse of Chun's face. His vellum eyelids drooped to slits, his expression one of infinite sadness. He shook his head almost imperceptibly at Remo. What? Remo mouthed silently to his master, but he received no answer. You're right, the vigilante said after a moment. He resumed entering codes into the mainframe. I wouldn't know anything about that at all. Remo felt there was something unsettled between him and the Cape character. What about you? He asked. You really trained with Chun? You heard him, the man said. No, the man said, Remo, shaking his head. No, I don't believe it. Chun isn't some dojo-renting after-school instructor. I just don't buy it. Funny, the man said flatly. That's exactly what I did. Remo boggled at the implication. You paid him, he said incredulously. You just paid him. That's the nice thing about mercenary organizations, he said. Money talks. Some money speaks loudly, came Chun's sing-song voice from across the cave. Before Remo could inquire further, the gaudily clad teen hero landed between them, sticking a perfect landing from an aerial somersault. Even with his domino mask in place, one could see the puffy beginnings of a black eye. The youth was rotating his shoulder, trying to work out the stiffness in it. Despite his somewhat beat-up condition, he still smiled, beaming with a confident exuberance. That has got to be the best workout I've had in months, he said. It was nothing, Chun sniffed, and then turned to Remo. He is far more mature than you were when you first began. But since you have grown, you are now only slightly less mature than he is. Nothing, the boy exclaimed. That trick where you stabbed my deltoid? That was awesome! Remo winced, recognizing the move that often sent normal men to their knees in pain. And that other stuff? Next time I meet up with Cassie, she'll be amazed. Remo jerked toward Chun. You didn't, he said. I begged you for years before you taught me that trick. He paused under the glare of his master. Wait a second, he said, turning to the teen. This trick, does it have anything to do at all with lightly repeated taps on the inner wrist? And the young hero tilted his head quizzically. Cassie's my regular sparring partner, he said. I plan on surprising her with that spinning ducking maneuver Master Chun showed me. Why? What are you talking about? Remo shook his head. Forget it, kid, he said. It's a dangerous combat maneuver, and you're really not ready for it yet. Chun sighed and turned away, an aura of disappointment palpably emanating from his ancient frame. Did I say only slightly less mature? We're ready, the vigilante said. He turned to his junior partner. I need you to get in position, he added, explaining the current plan. I'm on it, he said, bounding from the room, still touching his shoulder. Chun turned to their host. I don't suppose I might interest you in trading apprentices, he asked. The man gave no reply. Chapter 9. Did I mention I'm bored? Remo said as he stood over the vigilante's cape shoulder. Sorry that every battle can't be as hands-on as you'd like, the man said, typing away. I thought you said you were already ready, said Remo. So what are you doing now? Sending emails to your super friends? I'm initiating an internet search for Fool and tracking his most recent appearances. He scanned over a news story at the top of the search results. The financial district's Murphy building experienced a deadly computer error with its elevator system, resulting in doors opening up to empty shafts. 7 people, deep in their iPods, Blackberries, and PDAs, stepped blithely into nothingness, falling dozens of stories to their deaths. We've already lost a lot of time. So the plan is to look for him, and then what? The vigilante eyed the flashing green LEDs indicating incoming and outgoing traffic. The incoming one had begun blinking rapidly. Then we hope he sees us, looking, and comes to us. As if on cue, the mammoth central monitor went black, followed by the surrounding monitors, then the floodlights, pitching the cavern into total darkness. Showtime, the vigilante growled. 2 miles away, dangling halfway down the bluffs atop which perched the stately manor, the vigilante's teen apprentice gripped the rappelling ropes that held him aloft. His mentor's words traveled from the internal microphone in his cowl and were relayed to the miniature speakers built into the teen hero's domino mask. Upon hearing the code word, he clamped down hard with the bolt cutters, severing the bundle of data transmission lines that fed into the cave, effectively isolating the central computer from the rest of the world. There was nothing for him to do now but sit and wait. Inside the cave, the monitors slowly coming to life once more, collectively forming a grotesquely leering face of Dali-esque proportions.
Ooh-wee!
Fool whooped.
Now this is what I call a playground. Oops. Naughty, naughty, little man. I felt that back door hit me where the good Lord spit me.
Be ready, the hero warned Remo and Chun. For what?
But I'll worry about that later,
Fool continued.
After all, it isn't every day I get to play with such exquisite toys.
From above, Remo could hear a faint whine, quickly growing louder and stronger. The 3 men were already leaping away in different directions as a laser beam left a scorched mark on the ground where they had just been gathered.
What the H-E double hockey sticks was that?
Remo shouted over the din of another beam firing at the spot where he used to be. Cave defenses.
They're controlled by your supercomputer? Remo exclaimed. And you didn't think to maybe shut them off first?
We had to leave something intact to tempt Fool into the system, he said, his cape sprawling out behind him, the left lower corner scorched from a barely missed laser beam. The small sound of glass chinking, followed by the thunk of a rock hitting the ground, ended the attack. Chun clapped the dust from his hands, his graying tufts of hair floating lightly on an unfelt current of underground air.
Fortunately, you left us weapons of our own with which to defend ourselves,
the master of Sinanju said, lightly kicking the rock with the toe of his sandal. It's not over yet, the masked man said, scanning the cave warily. Of course it isn't, said Remo. Look, you're supposed to be one of the good guys, right? So how much should we be worried? Nothing here's likely to be lethal, right? The vigilante frowned. The cave's defense mechanisms are designed to gauge threat levels and respond with appropriate non-lethal force. Like I said, said Remo. But, he continued, that system is no longer in control. And more than one of the systems here were designed to contend with an out-of-control Kryptonian. He leveled a dark gaze at Remo. Should the need ever arise, he added. And we're going to stop here, because I just think it's a good stopping point, and come back to it.